Hello everyone, today we will embark on an extraordinary journey, where people do not hesitate to face lurking dangers to capture one of the most fearsome reptiles on the planet, crocodiles. The monsters of the river, with giant jaws that can crush anything in the blink of an eye. Sharp teeth like blades that dig deep into the flesh, and the cold eyes of a predator that has existed for millions of years, have now become direct opponents of the brave people. They have no other choice, because crocodile hunting is not only a tradition, but also a way to feed their families, to preserve life on the mangrove lands, canals and swamps where danger always goes hand in hand with hunger. And it is here that the adventurous stories begin, with sweat, blood and pride of people when conquering fierce nature. Imagine you are standing on a small wooden boat, swaying in the middle of a vast river. The night sky has fallen. Only the faint light from the moon is reflected on the rippling water. Every slight sound makes people's hearts beat faster, because under the calm water, somewhere lurk giant crocodiles, more than 4 meters long, weighing half a ton, with red eyes shining like two ghostly flames. People know that with just one small mistake, the boat can capsize, and their lives will be locked in the gaping mouth and fierce tail swings. However, despite the overwhelming fear, they still rush into their familiar work, setting traps, dropping fishing lines, checking every strange water movement on the river surface to guess the traces of this ferocious reptile. Behind that adventure is a process of training from a young age. Children here grow up with stories about crocodiles, taught by their fathers to distinguish their terrifying cries at night, how to read the long tracks in the wet mud, a sign that a crocodile has just crawled ashore. And most importantly, how to stay calm when facing the cold eyes of a master predator. People do not consider crocodile catching just a job, but also a battle for survival. Crocodile meat can be sold for a high price. Crocodile skin is even more rare, becoming the main source of income for many families. Some people say that if they catch just one large crocodile, separated by a hair's breadth, the man holding the spear plunged the sharp tip straight into the monster's steel-like neck. The crocodile roared, thrashing violently, causing waves to splash against him, drenching his entire body. Several others immediately threw ropes, trying to wrap around its body, but the terrifying force from its tail swishing made the rope taut, as if it could snap at any moment. No one was allowed to hesitate, because once the crocodile broke free, the consequences would be unpredictable. The rapid breathing, the loud screams, mixed with the sound of water bursting, created a scene that was both chaotic and suffocating. Finally, after many minutes of struggling, the crocodile gradually became exhausted. Its red eyes still flashed with anger, but its huge body began to slow down. And the people quickly took advantage of the opportunity, pulling hard on the rope, controlling it amid cheers that shook the waves. When the crocodile was finally tied tightly, lying motionless on the side of the boat, everyone dared to breathe a sigh of relief. But that joy only lasted for a moment, because they knew that there were still many others lurking around. Just a small mistake, and they could become easy prey. That's why vigilance was always kept at the highest level. A night of crocodile hunting can last for hours, even days, and each success is paid for with sweat. blood, and scars that never fade. Stories of people being attacked by crocodiles are always appearing in the village. Some people lost arms, others lost their lives under those sharp teeth. However, strangely, those tragedies did not scare the people, but on the contrary, made them more determined. They consider it fate, a challenge from heaven and earth, and a way to prove human bravery against the power of nature. Behind their resilient eyes is a belief that, as long as they have strength, they will continue their journey, continue to catch crocodiles, to feed their families and preserve their ancestors' traditions. The giant crocodile that had been tied to the side of the boat was now lying still. But no one dared to approach it for too long. They knew that, even with ropes wrapped around its snout and body, this monster still had hidden power. If they were careless, its final squirt would be enough to drag them into the dark water, where no one could be sure of their way back. Sweat beaded on each person's face, their eyes still glued to the water. Where the darkness hid unpredictable movements. No one laughed or spoke, because they understood that the joy of defeating a crocodile was only the beginning of a long night of challenges. The leader of the trip sat down, his rough hand gently stroking the tear on his arm. A sudden squirt had torn his thick shirt, leaving a long, bleeding wound, but he was not worried at all, because this was all too familiar. For him, the scars that ran down his arms, chest, and calves were not just memories of battles, but also pride, proof that he had faced death many times and survived to return. He glanced at the younger members of the group, nodding slightly as an encouragement, a reminder that courage was the only thing that could keep them alive in a world where crocodiles ruled. On the river, the wind began to pick up, carrying a chill that penetrated their skin. A strange sound echoed from afar, a dull boom, as if a large log had been thrown into the water, but they all knew that it was not a log, but the familiar sound of a large crocodile launching itself from the muddy banks. Immediately, the tension increased exponentially. All eyes turned to the dark water, where the ripples were spreading. Another crocodile had appeared, and perhaps it had sensed the presence of humans. The youngest man in the group, in his early 20s, had trembling hands but a determined gaze. This was his first time directly participating in a real hunt, and everything before him seemed even more terrifying than the stories he had heard. He remembered what his father had told him, when facing a crocodile. Never let it see you afraid. It will take that moment to attack. Fear still coiled in his chest, but he gritted his teeth, holding the spear tightly in his hand, ready to wait for the signal from the leader. The crocodile seemed to be playing a game of cat and mouse. It did not charge straight at the boat, but quietly glided around, leaving only faint ripples on the water. Its eyes occasionally flashed when the moon shone down, making people shiver as if they were being watched by an ancient spirit. Everyone was so quiet that they could hear their hearts pounding in their chests. Suddenly, a plop sound rang out right next to the boat. A strong impact shook the boat, almost capsizing it. Screams rang out. Someone swung their spear into the black water, but hit nothing but splashing waves. The crocodile disappeared again, leaving behind an even greater tension than when it was present. Because the most terrifying thing was the moment of waiting, not knowing where it would jump out from. The leader took a deep breath, then signaled the group to calm down. He quietly lifted a piece of bait, a piece of meat that had been prepared, and threw it into the water. The bait fell with a plop, just in time to sink when the water surface immediately boiled. A giant black shadow emerged, its jaws wide open, biting down on the bait. The sound of its teeth colliding with the iron hook made everyone shiver. The opportunity came, and in an instant, ropes were thrown down, wrapped around its giant body. The crocodile growled fiercely, thrashing so hard that water splashed up high, soaking the entire body. The boat shook. Violently, as if it was about to capsize. But everyone still held on to the ropes, bracing themselves against that furious force. In the chaos, the young man was almost thrown off the boat. He slipped. Half of his body fell to the water's edge. Immediately, those fiery red eyes swept over. Giant teeth opened, ready to finish him off in a single breath. But in that life or death moment, the leader rushed over, pulled him up, and at the same time threw a sharp spear into the monster's mouth. A goosebumps-inducing roar rang out, but it made the crocodile pause for a moment. That brief moment was enough for the others to tighten the ropes. Press hard, gradually weakening the monster in its struggles. The fight lasted more than 10 minutes, but to them, it felt like a century. Finally, when the rope was tightly wrapped around the crocodile's body and snout, it began to slow down. Its huge body only moving weakly. Heavy breathing echoed throughout the boat. Everyone was exhausted, but their eyes shone with the joy of victory. They had taken down another crocodile, the ruler of this water. The giant crocodile was pulled up, placed next to the previous one. The two massive bodies lying on top of each other made the already small boat even more cramped and heavy. But to them, it was a trophy, a hope, hoping for a full meal and money to sustain life. The night was long, but confidence grew in each person. A small fire was lit right on the boat, the flickering light shining on tanned, tired but radiant faces. They sat together, warming themselves, listening to the wind whistling through the reeds, the chirping of insects, and in the distance, still echoing the deep roar of other crocodiles. No one dared to be careless, because they knew that, at any moment, a new battle could begin. Meanwhile, the giant crocodile at the stern of the boat was still going crazy. The leader was straining to hold the rope, the spear in his hand repeatedly stabbing into its thick neck. The swishing of its tail created huge waves, almost throwing the whole group into the water. Screams, the sound of water bursting, and gasps of breath combined into a chaotic song of life and death. Finally, after many minutes of fierce struggle, both crocodiles were subdued. One smaller one was pulled up, gasping for breath. The other, huge and ferocious, lay motionless after being tightly held by a series of rope loops. The boat now carried 5 crocodiles, their heavy bodies almost causing the boat to sink. Everyone was exhausted, their clothes were torn, their bodies covered in blood and mud. But in their eyes, pride burned more than ever. They had done what few dared, faced death and won. When the sun rose high, they turned the boat back to the village. The way back was still full of danger, but their hearts were less heavy. They knew that each crocodile on this boat was not only a trophy, but also a testament to the courage and strength of humans in the face of fierce nature. And when they reached the shore, the cheers, the sounds of children running after them, the voices of the elderly touching the rough, thick skin of the crocodiles would echo throughout the village. But they also knew that Suddenly, the water surface broke. The crocodile rushed out from behind the boat, so fast that everyone was startled. But this time, the crocodile was not alone. From the other side, another shadow also emerged, smaller but more agile, thrashing violently, splashing water everywhere. 2 crocodiles attacked at the same time, causing chaos. The boat shook violently, the sound of wood cracking echoed terrifyingly.